Hello, folks, and welcome to another great edition of the Upland Forum. I am your host, Councilman Garcia, and I have a very special guest, but I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. In just a few minutes, I'll tell you exactly who we're going to be speaking to, but the subject is going to be about our senior community. So if you're listening, if you have a senior, if you're a senior, you want to stick around because you're going to learn a lot of great things too with my special guest today. But as always, I want to give you a little rundown of what's going on as far as the city. Don't forget that this Monday we do have a council meeting coming up. So make sure if you have any questions, send me an email, anything that we can address. We'll make sure to answer as quickly as possible. Some of the events that are coming up, don't forget that we do have the Extreme Egg Hunt that's coming up again in April 12th for all the adults. We also have the Barkin Bonanza, and that's Saturday, April 5th over at Baldy View Park from 10 a.m. to 1. There's also a lot of great events happening within our chamber as well too. Don't forget tomorrow is the Bomb Diggity Networking Mixer. Say that 10 times in a row. And that starts tomorrow at 5 o'clock, so don't miss it. And then we have a great ribbon cutting for King's Meat. If you have not heard of King's Meat, you need to show up to the ribbon cutting and show some great support as well too. There's a lot going on in our community, and it's just as a reminder, this Upland Forum is dedicated to our community, to issues, to politics in our community. Not discussing anything on the national level. This is all about us, our community, and how we can make it better. If you're a business that wants to be part of the show, send me a message. I'd love to have you on there because my whole goal is to make sure that everybody gets access to exposure, especially those businesses that are struggling as well too. We want to make sure that you guys are not the best kept secret, but also everybody in our community helps and supports you guys as well. So I think I kind of rushed through this because I want as much time as possible with my guest that's coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to please welcome Pam Bergman-Swartz. How you doing, Pam? Hold on. Let me go ahead. Start over. I think your mic was muted.
That's okay. I'm doing really great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Carlos. Really appreciate this.
No, I know you and I have been talking about this, the subject of seniors in our community. And I know that's something that's very dear to your heart. And I want to start, asking some questions. Tell us a little bit about you, so folks in our community get to know who Pam is and why are you doing what you're doing.
Sure. So my name is Pam Bergman-Swartz. I am an Upland resident. I've lived in Upland probably going on for 14 years now, and I have my wonderful husband, Carson, who is also my business partner and a veteran and a member of our Upland VFW post. So, plug for our veterans out there.
Yes.
And I am a seniors real estate specialist, and I've been working with seniors and their families probably, as long as I've been doing business, for 14 years. And the reason, my passion and my why, is because I was a caregiver to my own dad. For 13 years, I was doing that long distance by myself. So I'm originally from Hawaii. And, you get that call in the middle of the night that you never want to get. Your parent fell on the floor and in the middle of the night and laid there the whole night into half the next day. And it just happened to be that the person I had hired to come and cook and clean for him once a week had showed up that day. And that was the beginning of my journey with my dad and his 13-year journey with dementia and caregiving for him. And so during that process, I ended up having to take over medical and financial decisions for my dad. I ended up having to sell our family home of 42 years, all of doing it 3,000 miles away from home, and still trying to work and be a wife and mother and all of those things, right? So when I went through that process after my dad had passed away, I got into real estate to afford me the flexibility to care for him. But when he passed away, it was, what do I do with all this knowledge that I gained during those 13 years? I am a paralegal by trade, and it was, how can I take all of this knowledge to help the community? And when I was doing the research, at that time, there were probably 44 million caregivers providing unpaid care to loved ones, and all in the same situation as myself, not knowing the resources, not knowing the questions to ask, not knowing the people to trust, right, to be able to provide him the best care. And so when I really looked at it, the whole picture, it was a team of professionals. It was the estate planning attorney. It was my dad's social worker, the gerontologist. It was his financial planner, which helped me stretch his money from 7 years to 13 years, you know. So there's all these professionals. And so that is, I thought, well, I'd like just to incorporate that into my business. But what I didn't realize at that time is the challenge I would have because people are in such denial about aging and death.
You mean we're not going to live forever? That's
No.
my thing, right?
No.
So let me ask you this, and I like to throw in a little humor because this is actually a very serious subject. So I'm not trying to make a joke out of it.
No.
I kind of went through the same thing. Although my mom was older, not at that age, but she had other issues, you know, with the stroke and all of that. So this also applies to a lot of caregivers who not only are dealing with senior parents, but also, you know, parents that are some kind of ailment or, you know, handicap issues or things like that. But in what you've seen so far, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see our seniors are facing in our communities today?
Well, there's so many. There's so many
Pick
challenges.
your top three. Pick your top three that that keep
top
coming
three.
back.
Okay, the top three is money, finances. You know, you're not working anymore. I just got my first Social Security check last year, and it was, you know, $1,700 a month. And women are the main caregivers, right? So we're seeing deferred maintenance on homes, and you know, our older adults, they don't have the money to keep up their home. A lot of the children, this is the biggest thing I see, the children, the adult children are not available typically to help the parent either. They're still working, they're juggling work and caregiving, you know, raising their own family, or they live out of state, or they just don't want to be involved in it. The relationship is bad, or, you know, it's been estranged for whatever. But I would say those are the top, really the top issues. And because of affordable housing, that's, I would say, number one, right? You know, when you look at the cost of apartments, and we're seeing more and more unhoused seniors, and also our shelters are not equipped to deal with a senior who has disabilities. And that's really the rising rate of seniors with disabilities. It's pretty high, right?
And you know what? And that's something too that it really, when you look at legislators, people that are in office, people that are supposed to help our communities, right? Are supposed to make our lives better. It seems like they're making it worse, and I think it's even more focused or more relevant to our seniors who are on a fixed income, right? You have this rising cost of X, Y, and Z, and they are so used to living in this. So what happens now that they can't do that, right? Is the goal to put them all, you know, outside in the real world where just become homeless, and that's not fair either. So I think as legislation, and again, I'm talking specifically in our community, not necessarily that we have a whole lot to say, you know, at a local level for council, but we can advocate for for the folks, senators as well too, that they can help out some of our senior communities. What are you doing to really alleviate some of that stress, some of that extra expenditure that a lot of them were not really expecting, you know?
Right. Well, you know, you and I both were at the State of the Inland Empire yesterday, right? And I was shocked that the Inland Empire has the fastest growing senior population out of all the counties, right? And so it is really becoming more and more of an issue. And I feel like our at the city level and at all the different levels, right, that we're not prepared for our aging population. And I wish there were an answer, but there's so many there. Our system is relying heavily on the family to provide unpaid care. That is the answer that that they're looking at, right? That's the answer. Oh, you know, let the family take care of it. But I'm telling you, you know, women typically are the caregivers. You know, they take time off from work to have babies and raise kids and all of that. But when you reach retirement age, you know, women after they retire have a 70% higher likelihood of ending up in poverty because they haven't paid into their retirement, because they have taken more and more time off from work to provide care. So you have it on both ends, right?
No, it's true. And one of the things too is as you're talking about this, a lot of us, I remember for me, for example, I was juggling a newborn, juggling a family, juggling an 8-hour job, and not just an 8-hour job and then some, and then trying to take care of my mom, and my dad had passed away and so forth. But it takes a toll, right? There comes a point where it's just like, what am I going to do? And all I can do is just pray every day that I can get some kind of relief. But a lot of us don't, and that's the sad reality. So, in talking about this, how can families and caregivers, like, how can we best support our aging loved ones? And I'm sure you have a lot of stories to share with what you've seen in your
Mhm.
career, right?
Right. Well, I think number one, I think compassion and understanding. I mean, and I know patience runs very thin, especially when you're in that bubble. It can become very isolating. There are caregiver support groups out there, and I really highly encourage people that are in a caregiving role to reach out to those support groups. And just it's always helpful to hear someone else that's going through a similar story or similar situation, so you don't feel alone. There's I know Aging Next, which is a nonprofit in Claremont. They offer caregiver support programs in a lot of the assisted living communities as well. But I would say, from a caregiver standpoint, put yourself in that person's shoes, in your loved one's shoes, right? The First of all, they're having physical disabilities. Maybe they've had a stroke. They know that they're not the same that they used to be before. They're having to either give up their home. Maybe their spouse has passed away of many years. So they're going through many, many changes. And this generation, the seniors typically do not want to be a burden to their family.
Right.
They're very proud. They don't like to ask for help. They can be very stubborn, because I know I'm stubborn
Oh
and I'm
yeah,
a
yeah,
senior,
for
right?
sure.
So, but I mean, from a compassion and understanding standpoint, but again, I know that we all have our limitation with that, and there is a truly caregiver burnout, right? I mean that. So, if other family members, if you're in a great family, tight knit family, and you have other siblings that can provide respite, hey, come and, sit with mom or dad for a few hours so I can go get my hair done, or go run an errand, or just go sit in the park and read a book. That's one thing I didn't have, was a sibling that helped support me through that. So yeah, caregiver burnout is a real thing.
Yeah, and it's also, you kind of end up like, people would ask me, so I don't know how you do it, trying to balance and all of this, and maybe you can relate to this too. You turn on like autopilot. You can't stop and think about it because you're gonna break down. You just have to go, 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 right? And
Yeah.
you really don't have anybody that can say, "Hey, man, you need to sit here for a few hours." But I'm also gonna say this in respect that until we go through what we go through with our parents, right? You don't realize what you take for granted, because when they're gone, it's a simple phone call to hear their voice and say hello that's
Mhm.
no longer there. And
Mhm.
you catch yourself picking it up and trying to, and it's like, wait, they're gone, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't hit you until then. It's like, okay, I could have done a lot more, or I could have been that other sibling that could help out my brother, to help them out. And I always say, and I remember my parents always saying, it's a little too late when you're gone. Do what you can for your parents or for our aging community now. And I think you can relate to that too. At the end of the day, I'm guilt free knowing that I did everything and then some to make sure that they were taken care of. And then the other part of it, like you were talking about, a lot of our senior community too, they're very stubborn. I know I'm going to be that stubborn guy because I don't want to burden my kid or anybody to take care of me in that respect. So I understand their independence and all of that, but
Mhm.
there's got to be a way that we can bring that family unity as a team, right? Not just Pam taking care of mom, or somebody else taking care of mom because I'm just too busy, right? You hear that a lot from siblings. I'm just too busy.
Right. Well, we see a lot of families in crisis mode, and I just want to say the biggest gift, if you're in the situation where you're a senior, because I'm like all over this, be prepared. We see so many families in crisis. You should have, if you own a home, have a trust, have a will, make sure you have an advanced medical directive. Make sure, you have all of your documents in place, because I'm telling you, nothing is worse. I mean, look what happened during COVID.
Right.
You couldn't get into a hospital even if you tried to have an attorney come in and do a power of attorney, because they weren't allowed. And so
Right.
you have loved ones in the hospital, you've got your spouse or your partner that needs to pay bills and they can't because they didn't have their affairs in order. And I see that more often than not. And it's tragic, right? Or you have separate bank accounts. And a lot of couples have separate bank accounts, and nobody has access to that money. And so, it's making a list of bills and, passwords, so that, I went through this. And Carlos, I lost my son, 5 or 6 years ago, and he was young. He was 37. And, you know, they had separate accounts. And so nobody knew what the digital passwords are. A big thing right now, right? Have been for a long time. And so it was very difficult to get access to funds for his wife. And so you don't want to put your family member, it's hard enough, right? To go through a crisis moment, but making sure, it's like, that's the greatest gift you can give your adult child, or, as far as going through that process. And also having those conversations, like, how are you doing financially? Right? Those are tough conversations. Nobody wants. My dad and I had lots of conversations. My folks were divorced. My dad was very frugal. My mother was not. My dad was willing to talk about the trust and all of that. And I had all of that. But my mom, on the other hand, she thought it was bad juju to talk about it. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, you have both ends of the spectrum. But I think the best thing you can do is be prepared as best as you can, and making sure that the financial, situation, right?
And that's something also that, though we're talking about seniors, you just brought up a very good point too, that I don't think a lot of parents realize that when your son or daughter turns 18, they're considered an adult. And if you don't have a medical directive, guess what? You have no say in taking care of them if they wind up in the hospital, God forbid. So
Right.
that's something else that I think it's overlooked. I think if you're watching, share this with other folks as well too. Like I said, I know we're focusing on seniors, but this is also very crucial, because if, God forbid, something happens to that youngster at 18, we have absolutely no say. It's not fair, but it is what it is. So it's up to us to, a lot of us, because we're so busy, we always say, "Hey, when I get around to it, when I get around to it." No, you got to get around to it now and avoid any heartache in the future, because you could have prevented it, or you could have done something, but you waited too long.
Right. And
Um,
I see that all the time. People wait too long. They wait way too long.
no, you're absolutely right. So let me ask you another question also. As we talk about our senior community, what are some key signs that a senior might need additional support or services? Like, what is, obviously there's the obvious signs, but what are some other things that maybe we're not aware of?
Well, I think when I go into clients' homes and you see a pile of unopened mail, that's a really good sign that, they're not having that memory. They may be getting into a few more accidents. That was my dad. My dad had, he had to have emergency open heart surgery. So when I was going through his bank account, I'm realizing he's adding when he should have been subtracting, and subtracting when he should have been adding. And, I said, Dad, how long have you been sick? And he said, well, it started out with, I couldn't find my keys, and then I forgot to eat. Right. And then he's getting in all these other little fender benders. Right. It's just, or they're having more falls, or just not keeping themselves up, wearing the same shirt and it's stained, those types of things.
And that's the other thing also, that we need to take a look at and really pay attention to our parents, right? And I don't want this to sound like I'm preaching, but you got to remember, they made a lot of sacrifices for us growing up, and now it's our turn to repay that back, and help them also in whatever they're going. Which kind of leads me to my next question: is how can we as a community, as community members, get involved in helping or supporting our seniors?
Well, I think volunteering is a wonderful way to give back to the community, and there's all different organizations. I know Aging Next. And the reason why I keep bringing up Aging Next is because I served on their board for 9 years, and they are providing those people who are aging in place with non-medical needs, right? So transportation, companionship. They have a village membership program for socialization, which is a very important part of aging. But if you have a senior in your community, check in on them, go say hello. If you see their yard overgrown, go mow the yard for them. If they're having problems taking out their trash, it's just those little things that you can do that make such a huge impact on a senior, especially if you haven't seen them for a while. You may want to do a welfare check on that person,
Right.
Yeah, invite them to dinner, have them come over for a meal. I mean, you'd be surprised what the latest statistics are like. There's over 1 million solo agers just in California, right? So there's a lot of lonely people out there. A lot of lonely.
So as we talk about getting involved, setting up volunteers, I know that you've also been working very hard to make a difference for our senior community. And I know you and I talked about creating maybe some workshops in the community to bring some additional awareness. Tell us a little bit about that vision of in the perfect world, right? What is the message that we want to get out there? What is the type of workshop that we want to put out there to be able to educate folks on taking care of our senior community?
Oh my gosh, my perfect world, my perfect vision would be to have a home, several homes, affordable homes for seniors, even if I kind of think of the Golden Girls model, right? Where you've got a bunch of, people who are living together. Maybe you have a college student. This is where we can get college students involved about, preparing meals and making sure that they're eating healthy and those types of things. I think it's nutrition is a huge part because of the cost of food. When I go to the grocery store, the first thing I think about is how are our seniors eating, right? When I go to the grocery store, $100 for a small bag of food, so we could be, and I know that there's different meal programs out there for seniors, but, I don't think there's such a need for it. Yeah. So the housing is a big issue, and what can we adopt a senior? Maybe it's adopt a senior program, right? That's been my vision as well. But just bringing more awareness. I know the city of Upland, and Carlos, you probably have more information on this. It's about the low-income housing that's coming for seniors because we don't have enough.
Yeah, there's some things in progress already for that particular piece. I know that has to do also with we have the Upland Manor also that can help. That's been a great place as well, and there's other entities also. But I like what you said about adopting a senior, right? And I think a challenge that I like to put out there, as you and I talk about more creating these workshops for our seniors, is, hey, the next holiday that's coming up, let's just say, for example, if it's Easter or whatever it is, let's get some volunteers. Drop your name in the chat. Yeah, volunteer. I say we start and adopt a senior program here in our city. I know that there's many organizations that already have that, but let's start. We talk the talk, let's walk the walk, right? So let's create our own little community of volunteers that we'll go visit folks during Easter. We'll go visit folks. I know we just have Valentine's, but making sure that they're not forgotten. I know that I do this a lot for our military folks. I'm very close to a lot of our senior service people. They're very dear to my heart, and I will always go out of my way to help them as well as part of that senior community. But I also want, like, you have great ideas. I'm sure there's other folks watching too that would love to volunteer and give some of their time to just sit, read a book, talk to some of these seniors. I've always joked that some of my best friends are the senior community because they're a wealth of knowledge, they're a wealth of resources, and man, the stories that they tell you is just incredible. It's fascinating. In a perfect scenario, I like to just capture all that so they can live on in their legacy.
That's one thing before we sign off. The one thing that I do encourage people to do is, your grandkids, you all have phones, you all have cell phones, interview your grandparent, right? Like, because we just look at ourselves or them as their mom or our dad or whatever it is. Because I'll never forget my son, even, when my dad passed, and after the eulogy, we sat and had some coffee, and he goes, Mom, I have to apologize because I thought this whole time when you were coming to Hawaii, you were coming on vacation. I didn't know what you were doing, right? And so our kids only see us in a certain role, right? They only see us they don't recognize that we've had lives, that we've, had jobs and careers and have done a lot of volunteer work, and how important it is to share that history with the legacy with the next generation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And folks, I've got Pam's information there, so please write it down. Also, you can leave a message, and we'll make sure that it gets to Pam as well too. So we are wrapping the show. Any last parting words before I give you my goodbye spiel?
No, I just love on our seniors, care, call your mom, call your dad. Because I'm telling you, both my mom passed last year, and not a day goes by that I wish I could pick up the phone and call her. So give your parents a call.
Great advice, folks. And remember, follow us on the Upland Forum. Please make sure that you share out the stream, share out the forum itself, invite as many folks as you can. And if you are a business owner or doing great things in Upland, because I'd love to hear from some of our city community leaders who are doing wonderful things like you are for our senior community. There's other folks that are doing great things for kids as well. Send me a message. I'd love to have you and feature you on the show as well, because at the end of the day, we're a community that needs to thrive together. And how do we do that? By helping one another get to the next level and thrive together, right? So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you also for stepping up and helping our senior community. I know that you and I in the next few weeks are going to be talking more about these workshops, because we're going to make it happen. Like I said, we talk the talk, but we're going to walk the walk.
That's right. All right, Carlos, thank you.
Until then, guys, please make sure, like I said, share the forum. And I look forward to connecting with you guys again at the next episode. All right, take care.